You see, most of us are caught in a peculiar trap. From the time we were children, we were told, "Don't just sit there, do something." Yet rarely does anyone ever say the opposite. Rarely does anyone whisper, "Don't just do something, sit there." We've grown up believing that to be valuable, we must always be in motion, always planning, always producing, always chasing. And so, if we find ourselves idle, simply sitting, breathing, existing, we feel guilty, as though we've wasted precious time. But here is the paradox. What if, in your endless effort to make life happen, you have missed the very thing you were searching for? What if the secret, the great irony, is that when you stop trying so hard to get somewhere, when you stop forcing the river to flow faster, life unfolds with a grace and beauty you could never manufacture? Now, I don't mean to say that doing nothing is lying flat on your back forever or ignoring every responsibility. No, doing nothing is not laziness. Doing nothing is not apathy. It is, rather, the art of stepping back. It is learning to dance with the flow of things instead of exhausting yourself trying to control it all. But why does this sound so terrifying? Why does the idea of doing nothing feel like failure? It is because we live in a culture that worships busyness. From morning until night, we are intoxicated by activity. People boast about how little they sleep, as if exhaustion is a badge of honor. We measure worth in productivity, in achievements, in the size of our to-do lists. And so we've built a strange superstition that to pause, to rest, is to fall behind. But ask yourself, fall behind what? Behind whom? Is there really a race going on, or have we simply imagined one? Because if you stop and look carefully, you will notice that life is not racing anywhere. The trees are not in a hurry to grow. The stars are not rushing across the sky. The ocean waves do not panic about whether they will reach the shore in time. Only we humans, with our anxious little calendars and ticking clocks, seem to believe that life is a competition. You see, the trouble is not that life is fast. The trouble is that we do not know how to be still. We don't trust stillness. We think that if we aren't constantly doing, constantly becoming, then nothing valuable is happening. But the great secret is precisely this. In the silence, in the stillness, something extraordinary is already unfolding. Let me give you an example. Imagine a farmer planting seeds. If he digs them up every day to check if they are growing, nothing will happen. The soil requires patience, darkness, time. The farmer must trust the process of growth, which is invisible. Doing nothing in this case is not laziness, it is wisdom. For the most important things in life, love, growth, healing, cannot be forced. They must be allowed. And so, what I call the secret power of doing nothing is really the courage to trust life, to stop trying to bully it, manipulate it, control it, to relax and let the universe breathe through you. But many of us are frightened by this. We say, if I don't strive, I will lose everything. If I stop pushing, nothing will happen. My dreams will vanish. But that fear is based on the illusion that you are the sole creator of life, that everything depends upon your endless effort. And yet, think for a moment. Who taught your heart to beat? Who told your lungs to breathe? Who grew your bones when you were a child? Was that your effort? Or was it the effortless work of life itself? This is what I mean by doing nothing. It is not giving up, it is giving in. It is surrendering to the intelligence of life, which has been carrying you all along, whether you knew it or not. And here's the wonderful thing. When you finally allow yourself to do nothing, when you give yourself permission to simply exist without agenda, something remarkable happens. The anxiety begins to soften. The mind becomes clear. The heart opens. Suddenly you discover a sense of freedom that all your striving could not give you. Of course, the ego resists this. The ego loves to be busy. It says, look at me, I am accomplishing, I am important, I am in control. But deep down, the ego is terribly afraid. It is afraid that if you stop, you will realize the truth, that life doesn't need your frantic control in order to happen. And this is perhaps the greatest relief of all, that you are not the manager of the universe. Now, I invite you to consider this. If you were to take even a single day and refuse to do anything not out of laziness, but as an experiment, what would happen? You would sit, you would breathe, you would watch the sunlight move across the room. Perhaps you would notice the birds or the sound of the wind. At first, you might feel restless. You might think I'm wasting time, but slowly you would realize that time itself is not something to waste. Life is happening perfectly well without your interference. And the more you see this, the more you discover that the power of doing nothing is not passive, it is profoundly creative, because in that emptiness, in that stillness, new insights arise. Creativity blossoms, love deepens. You become more alive than when you were desperately trying to be alive. This is why, in the East, there is an idea called Wu Wei, which means effortless action, or action without force. It is the way of nature, the way of water. Water never tries to force its way, yet it wears down mountains. Water does not strive, yet it nourishes everything. To live in the spirit of Wu Wei is to rediscover that your life, too, can flow with ease if only you would stop interfering with it. But here's the catch. Doing nothing is difficult for those who believe their worth is measured by what they do. And so, for many of you listening, the practice of doing nothing will feel uncomfortable, even scary. But that discomfort is precisely the doorway. For when you learn to rest in the silence, when you trust yourself to be rather than constantly become, you awaken to a deeper kind of life. And so, my dear friends, the secret power of doing nothing is not a trick, not a shortcut. It is a profound realization that you were never meant to race, to chase, to force. You were meant to be. And in being, you discover that all you ever wanted was already here. You see, one of the deepest reasons we cannot sit still, one of the reasons we fear doing nothing, is because society has conditioned us to equate our value with our productivity. From school to work, from the first grade to our careers, the message has been relentless. Keep moving, keep proving, keep achieving. When we rest, the mind whispers, you are falling behind. But behind what? Behind whom? The truth is, there is no finish line, only the illusion of one. This illusion is carefully maintained by culture. Advertisements tell us that we are incomplete, that we must buy, improve, strive, and hustle to be somebody. Social media feeds us endless comparisons, showing us curated lives of others who seem always busy, always successful. We then measure ourselves against this fantasy and conclude, I must do more. Thus, the moment we try to sit still, guilt rises. And that guilt is not natural, it is taught. It is the echo of a culture addicted to speed. We seldom realize, for example, that our most private thoughts and emotions are not actually our own. For we think in terms of languages and images which we did not invent, but which were given to us by our society. This is true about our obsession with busyness. It is not a natural instinct, it is a borrowed program. And to break free, one must dare to disobey the program, to reclaim stillness as a form of rebellion. Think of how animals live. A cat can sit by a window for hours, watching nothing in particular, entirely content. A bird may perch on a branch, doing nothing, yet fully alive. Only humans call this laziness. But why? Because humans carry the weight of self-importance. We think we are managers of the universe, and so doing nothing feels like negligence, as if the stars will fall out of the sky unless we keep moving. But this is illusion. Life does not need our frantic supervision. Doing nothing, then, is not just an act of rest, it is an act of truth. It reveals to us that we were never the controllers, only the participants. The river flows without our pushing. The sun rises without our permission. The heart beats without our command. And so, when we pause, when we surrender, we rediscover that life is trustworthy. This realization is liberating. For the greatest freedom is not in controlling life, but in finally allowing it to unfold. So the real question becomes, why are we so afraid of stillness? Because in stillness, all our distractions fall away. When we sit quietly without tasks or entertainment, we are left with ourselves. And many of us are not comfortable with that. We fear our own thoughts, our own silence. Yet this is precisely why doing nothing is powerful. It forces us to meet the self we keep avoiding. This encounter is not meant to frighten us, but to wake us. For the self we fear is not a monster, but a misunderstood companion. Beneath all the noise of judgment and comparison, there is a presence that is already whole, already complete. By daring to do nothing, we give ourselves the chance to rediscover this presence. Consider how modern life has shaped our nervous systems. Endless notifications, constant news, rushing schedules, they keep us in a state of low-grade panic. And when that panic becomes normal, silence feels strange, even dangerous. But when you practice stillness, the nervous system recalibrates, your breath deepens, your heart slows, and your mind begins to expand rather than contract. Doing nothing is medicine for a world addicted to noise. But here lies the paradox. Doing nothing is not about achievement. If you approach it with the thought, I will become better by being still, you are already missing the point. The power of doing nothing is in its purposelessness. It is sacred because it is free from utility. It is an act without agenda, and in that freedom, life reveals itself in ways no amount of striving ever can. Think about the moments when you've had your greatest insights. Rarely do they come when you are grinding, forcing, straining. More often, they arrive when you are walking aimlessly, gazing at the sky, or simply resting. Creativity does not emerge from pressure, it blossoms in space. This is why many traditions speak of stillness as holy, not because it serves a function, but because it reminds us of who we truly are when all functions fall away. To understand the wisdom of doing nothing, look at nature. Trees do not rush to grow. They simply stand in the sun, and the process unfolds. Rivers do not strain to flow. They move naturally toward the sea. Flowers do not force themselves to bloom. They open when the season is right. Life itself demonstrates that being is enough. Yet humans, in our restlessness, try to outsmart nature. We imagine we can engineer happiness, plan enlightenment, schedule serenity. And in the process, we forget that the universe has already set the rhythm. When you watch waves, you don't see one wave trying to be better than another. You don't see competition, only movement, only flow. But we humans, we are taught to compare, to evaluate, to rank ourselves endlessly. So when we sit still, we feel guilty, we feel unproductive. Yet perhaps that is the very illness of our age, the inability to simply exist without justification. Doing nothing restores the forgotten truth that life does not need your approval to be valuable. Think of your own heart. Right now, it beats without your permission. Your lungs breathe without your effort. Your body is a miracle of doing without doing. And yet your mind believes it must carry the world on its shoulders. What if, instead, you trusted the same intelligence that beats your heart and moves the stars? That is the essence of the secret power of doing nothing. It returns you to trust. To trust that life, in its vastness, does not depend on your constant interference. There is also freedom in recognizing that nothing is truly wasted. When you do nothing, when you rest, when you wander without a goal, the world does not collapse. In fact, often things fall into place. Problems that seemed unsolvable begin to dissolve on their own. Decisions that felt impossible suddenly become clear. This is not magic, it is alignment. By stepping back, you allow life to breathe through you. You discover that you are not the driver of existence, but its expression. And yet, we resist. We cling to the illusion of control, believing that if we stop pushing, everything will fall apart. But have you noticed that when you finally stop worrying about a situation, it often resolves itself? Have you noticed that when you stop chasing after someone, they sometimes return on their own? This is not coincidence. It is the principle of harmony. When you relax into the moment, you stop creating friction. You allow life to unfold as it was meant to, not as you insist it should. Doing nothing does not mean being irresponsible. It does not mean abandoning your duties or ignoring life's realities. What it means is learning when to stop interfering, when to let life breathe. Imagine trying to hold water tightly in your hands. The harder you grip, the more it slips away. But if you cup your palms gently, the water rests there. This is the paradox. Control is lost by force and gained by trust. When you allow things to unfold, you discover a deeper order, one that cannot be managed, only experienced. This is why the greatest spiritual teachers, sages, and mystics often speak of surrender. Not surrender in defeat, but surrender in recognition. The recognition that life is larger than your will. You cannot command the tides, you cannot force the seasons, and you cannot dictate the rhythm of love. When you realize this, doing nothing becomes the highest wisdom. You stop fighting the river and allow it to carry you. In that flow, you are not diminished. You are liberated. Freedom is not found in controlling life, but in trusting it. Imagine dancing. If you try to control every movement, you lose the rhythm. But if you allow the music to guide you, the dance flows effortlessly. Life is like that dance. The more you try to choreograph it, the more you stumble. But when you let the universe lead, you discover grace. Doing nothing is not passivity. It is the art of cooperation with existence. There is also profound courage in doing nothing. It takes bravery to stop running, to stop distracting yourself, to face the silence of simply being. Most people cannot bear it. They need constant noise, endless motion, because stillness reveals the truth that we are not in control, that life is fragile, that we are temporary. But in facing that silence, you find peace. You realize that being temporary is not a curse, but a blessing. Doing nothing shows you that impermanence is not something to fear. It is the very reason life is precious. Think of the sky. Clouds drift by. Storms come and go, but the sky remains. Your thoughts, your worries, your ambitions, they are the clouds. Doing nothing is returning to the sky itself, the vast openness that holds everything yet clings to nothing. In this spaciousness, you realize that no effort is required to be complete. You are already whole. You were never broken. The secret power of doing nothing is that it dissolves the illusion of incompleteness. It shows you that you have always been enough. Now, what happens when you truly embrace doing nothing? Something unexpected. Life takes care of itself. The world does not collapse because you stopped meddling. In fact, you often discover that things move more smoothly without your constant interference. The flower blooms without your effort. The heart beats without your command. The sun rises without your permission. And so, the power of doing nothing is that it reveals the harmony already present in existence. Consider relationships. Many of us destroy love by trying to control it. We push, we pull, we demand, we cling. But when you stop interfering, when you give the other space, love grows naturally. Doing nothing in love is not neglect, it is trust. It is knowing that affection cannot be forced, that intimacy cannot be manufactured. Love, like a tree, needs room to grow. If you stand back, if you allow, you discover that love flourishes in ways you never expected. Think also of creativity. Artists often suffer because they force themselves to produce. They sit in front of the canvas, the page, the instrument, and strain to make something happen. But the best art comes when you stop trying. When you relax, when you daydream, when you do nothing, the idea suddenly arrives. Inspiration is like a bird. Chase it and it flies away, sit quietly and it lands on your shoulder. Doing nothing is the secret doorway to true creativity. And what about happiness? Isn't it strange that the harder you try to be happy, the more it slips away? Happiness, like sleep, cannot be willed. If you try to sleep, you stay awake. If you try to be happy, you become tense. But when you let go, when you stop chasing, happiness appears on its own. Doing nothing reveals that joy is not something you achieve. It is something you notice, something that has been with you all along. The world we live in is addicted to effort, always striving, always reaching, always chasing the next milestone. But the wisdom of doing nothing is revolutionary. It says you don't need to strive. You don't need to prove. You don't need to achieve. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to breathe. You are allowed to simply exist. And in that simple existence, you rediscover life's beauty. The bird song, the laughter of a child, the wind through the trees, all of it becomes radiant again. Perhaps the greatest gift of doing nothing is freedom. When you stop trying to control life, you are no longer enslaved by it. You become free to enjoy it, to play with it, to dance with it. You realize that you don't have to carry the world on your shoulders, it carries itself. You don't have to fix yourself, you were never broken. You don't have to justify your existence, you are existence itself. This is the power of doing nothing. Now, imagine if you truly lived this way. Imagine waking up tomorrow and not rushing, not forcing, not grasping. Imagine simply allowing life to unfold. You would find that things still get done, but with less stress. You would find that love still flows, but with more ease. You would find that happiness still appears, but with less struggle. Doing nothing does not mean abandoning life, it means finally being present for it. And so, I leave you with this thought. Life was never meant to be a race. It was never meant to be conquered or mastered. It was meant to be lived, savored, experienced. Doing nothing is the way back to this truth. It is the art of stepping aside so that life can show itself to you. When you stop running, when you stop forcing, when you stop chasing, you discover that you were already where you wanted to be. Remember, the flower does not strive to bloom, the river does not struggle to flow, and the stars do not labor to shine. They simply are, and in their being, they are magnificent. You are no different. You are part of this same universe, this same unfolding. You do not need to justify your existence. You do not need to prove your worth. Simply by being, you are already enough. So the secret power of doing nothing is not laziness nor apathy. It is wisdom. It is the recognition that life is complete as it is, that you are complete as you are. When you embrace doing nothing, you discover that everything you sought was already here. And in that discovery, there is peace, there is freedom, there is joy.